All right, people. This is a good episode.
Yeah, Tony's a really smart guy and a fun guy and a loving family father figure. There's so much richness in this. It definitely goes longer than an hour for good reason.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of us and proud of him. And I think you guys will be both entertained, informed, challenged, and you'll laugh. Like, his sense of humor is great. And I think that's a big part of why we do this. And I love that we're doing this in that vein. Not all serious things are funny, but I'm serious about being funny, and you know that. So here we go. Yeah, be sure to check out our charity, the Compton Cowboys. Click subscribe, share, do all the buttons.
Do all the buttons. Hit them buttons, baby.
Ew.
And drink a Drainachrome cola. What? Hold on. I almost left the meeting. Where's my record?
Say no?
11.
Zeker wegen dem.
Joj, iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live with another episode of Moped Outlaws. And we're here with the very schmaltzy Tony Schmaltz.
Well said.
It's great to have you. And before we get into it, I would like to go ahead and do a little bit more formal introduction.
Oh, my God. Okay.
In a world that appears to be going crazy, we continue to build walls around us to protect ourselves from some force or evil that someone somewhere is warning us about. Although all we're doing is building walls that are blocking us from our true success and happiness. Imagine with me for a moment that you were able to take a big ass hammer and bust through those walls. You could then learn how to finally get what you want from your life, career, business, relationships, or anything else. This will give you the power to create the life that you have always desired, the life of your dreams for you and your family. This is what you get with the principles shared in this book, Wake the Fuck Up. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your success. Join us on this journey through these principles that we're creating success for thousands, if not millions of people around the world.
We don't need the whole book read, but thank you.
There we go.
I do love that you tried to do that in the movie trailer voice. That's awesome.
Yeah. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, the VO guy in me has to do this. Thank you, Greg, for putting up with me. The feeling's mutual.
Right.
So, Tony, what drove you to become a miracle worker?
Wow. Okay. So there's been lots of years of, I've been a leader in the corporate world for lots of years and saw lots of people grow, helped lots of people grow. However, I was always having to do it somebody else's way. Like, I was always seeing places where I could help others get more than what they already had, but they're like, nope, this is the way we do it here. You got to do it like this. I'm like, shit. So I was always getting shut down. And when we moved, my family and I are originally from Seattle area. We moved to Florida in 2018.
Wow.
And
that's a crazy move.
All the way across country. And we got to Panama City 2 months before Hurricane Michael, the Category 5 hurricane, went flying through. So that was quite the first experience. And we wrote it out. We were hiding in a master closet for 4 hours. Wow. The challenge was the company I worked for there was that was when I really got into entrepreneurship, was probably the worst at what I was just talking about than any company I've ever worked at. They were the worst leaders. They were just mean to their people. It was horrible. And I'd been a leader most of my life. And I'm like, what are you doing? We're in a people world. What are you treating people like crap for? This is ridiculous. So I hired my own first coach, personal coach. Call him a life coach, call him personal coach, whatever. And it just like clicked. After working with this guy, I became miserable at this company. I'd always been a happy guy and then became miserable working at this place. And this guy just like flipped the switch for me. And after about 6 months of working with him, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help people create the same miracles, whether it's in their minds, their life, their businesses, that this guy's helping me create. And that's where I went ever since.
So what do you define as a miracle?
Helping somebody create something they didn't think was possible in their own life.
Okay. So you still live a life of miracles?
Absolutely. Every single day.
All right. So this week, what's a miracle you can speak to that you experienced?
The fact that I made it here on time for this show. I didn't think that was happening.
All right. That's solid. So
That's a miracle for all three of us, I think.
Yeah, and it sounds like in there is the linchpin of a miracle is also your viewpoint, the way you look at something. Like you could have looked at this experience you had moving through traffic and thinking you don't have time as just another grind, another fucking thing that you have to do. But instead you're looking at it as like, hey, this is amazing. I did not think this was going to happen.
That's right. That's right. And there's more this week, of course. That was just very, very recent. So I have my own show also titled this, where I had a guest on the other day, and another miracle. This is Wednesday. Another miracle would happen is this guy is now going to introduce me to the CEO of Black Rifle Coffee and introduce me to Dave Asprey. So people who I thought were out of reach for a show that was just getting started. And he's like, yeah, no, this is great. I'm going to connect you with these guys. And he sent me like 10 people now that are all where I thought were not reachable. So another miracle.
They stack up when you start actually breathing life into them, don't they?
Yeah. Right.
Most people talk about mindset. What would you say is an alternative to that phrase that's more in alignment with the way that you coach and the way that you want to bring forward miracles?
Mental toughness. I love that phrase. And it's actually a phrase that another coach friend of mine has actually called the mental toughness coach. And when him and I had our first conversation about 3 years ago, I was like, oh, do you mind if I use that phrase? Because I love that way more than mindset. He's like, please have at it. He's like, just make sure you give me credit. His name's Chris Doris. I'm like, no problem. So I like to use mental toughness. And it's funny because I use both in the book a little bit, but mental toughness is way different. Mindset can mean so many different things. You can have a poor mindset. You can think like crap and fill your head with negative thoughts. It's still a mindset. But when you're mentally tough, you tend to get going.
So how do you differentiate then mental toughness from like a stuck in the mud individual who's only a narrow vision?
Well, mental toughness is and that example is being able to throw out the victim card. Things happen for you, not at you. This didn't happen to me. It happened for me. What can I learn from this? Not, oh my God, these guys are killing me or this thing's killing me. No, what can I do with this? Okay, this happened. Cool. I may not have had any control over it. Now, how can I use this and make something better in my life? That's the difference between poor mindset and mental toughness.
So when you guys came out of that closet after 4 hours of what were you looking around at? Did you have a home?
So we were actually staying with a friend of ours because we had just moved there. So, I mean, we were just staying in a temporary house, and this guy had all the survival gear, all the generators, things like that. And when we walked out, fortunately, he was in a brick house, which the house itself held up pretty well, but the roof didn't. So even though the roof was still on the house, there was just like water dripping in from where all the rain was. So there was just puddles everywhere inside where all the roof, you could see the patches on the ceiling where the water had been coming through. And then as soon as we walked outside, we've got his 40-foot RV, which is like literally laying on its side, got tipped over. It's supposed to be good up to 200 miles an hour. Obviously not. No trees left, no fences. I mean, him and I met his neighbors that he had never thought he was going to meet because there was a fence in between, and now everything was gone. Just like, it literally looked like somebody had taken a big chainsaw and went halfway through everything.
So how do you and your wife experience this and go, this happened for us?
Well, that one was actually pretty easy. And that was before we kind of went into this mental toughness stage. during that time, I was actually really impressed. Even though it was the most destructive thing I've ever seen in my life, I saw a community come together like I never thought possible. Like people of all races, religions, creeds, you name it. Everyone was helping each other out. Everybody was there supporting somebody else. Guys driving down the street with chainsaws, cutting people out of their driveways, people helping them with their power, their water, their whatever. It was amazing to see a community like that come together that I'd never experienced before.
And that's the true power of community, right? It's not in the competitive spirit or any of that. It's when the road is scattered and we all stand for each other.
Right.
Question.
Yeah.
Why do you think we fall back so easily into these divisive stances then? What is it about us that forgets?
It's not that we forget per se. It's that we allow ourselves to feed ourselves with the wrong shit. It's like if you sit here and watch mainstream media or you get caught up in the wrong social medias, you are literally allowing a garbage truck full of shit to pull up next to your head and pour it into your ear. I mean, that's what's happening. That's literally what's happening. We literally ignore the news. We don't have cable, never had cable. Well, haven't had cable in like 5 years. We do have streaming services. We'll watch movies from time to time or shows, but no news, no regular TV. I hear there was a debate last night. I don't know shit about it. I don't know. I ignore that stuff because guess what? It doesn't have anything to do with me. I control what's happening in here and in here. And when you allow that other stuff to pour in and funnel through your ears, that's what you end up with. You end up going back to that poor mindset versus the mental toughness.
You've said we a few times. Is your wife equal partner in this take on life that you have?
Yeah. She wasn't always. She was probably the hardest nut to crack as far as changing that. So my wife is Cambodian, Asian, and that community in general, I mean, we've been together for 21 years, the first 15 of which we were always around her side of the family. And they are some of the most negative people you've ever seen. I mean, and it's just the way they were raised. It's not that they, mean to be, but they listen to the people around them. None of them do any research whatsoever. They take word of mouth. Like, so-and-so said this. I'm like, cool. Where'd they get that from? I don't know, but they told me, so it's got to be true. Oh, God. So it was just a constant barrage of that kind of mentality. And so when we moved to Florida and I started getting into coaching, she was right there with me. And she's been my accountability partner through most of this. That's and awesome. Since then, she actually catches me more than the other way around. When I spout something off that could be a little less than positive, she's like, all right, I get it. Yep. Okay, cool. Yep. You're right. Nope. Cancel.
I want to ask you a question about your coaching business. And I want to say this is a question that's coming from a very personal place for me as a coach. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know myself and other coaches tend to struggle with is how do you generate client relationships? I'd love if you talk a little bit about the way that you create interest in your business.
Well, you have to have conversations regardless and outreach to reach out to people. And it could be people it can be people you are just meeting. I use a lot of social media and I don't do a bunch of posting. Everyone talks about attraction marketing, things like that. I do post regularly, daily. However, I'm the one who's getting into the messenger and reaching out to people. And I always just get to know people. I'm having conversations, get to know a little bit more about them. And if it seems like somebody who I think I can help out, then I will suggest getting on a Zoom call. However, when I'm suggesting that, I'm making sure they know that this is absolutely complimentary. I don't maybe say it that way, but I'm let's get on a call. Let's talk about things. And two, I also help them understand it's going to be one of the most powerful conversations they've had maybe ever. And if you present it like that and you present what they're going to get out of the call versus just say, hey, I'll give you a free coaching call. They're all like, yeah, there's freaking a million coaches out there. I don't need another one. You're like, no, here is what you're going to get. This is why it's going to be so powerful for you. We're going to identify where you are and where you want to be and what's keeping you from getting there. And then we're going to help you find out what's possibly in your head that's blocking you. And so show them how they're going to get the results. I agree with you. Most people struggle with that. My current coach just laid a challenge on me not that I'm struggling with the client creation, but he wanted to boost it a little bit. And so just 2 weeks ago, he said, okay, here's my challenge for you, Tony. I want you to create 30 coaching conversations outside of clients in the next 30 days. So I want you to have 30 coaching conversations in the next 30 days. He said it can be 15 people twice, or it can be 10 people 3 times, or 30 people once. He's like, whatever that means to you, do it. I'm like, ooh, that means I'm going to have to up my game on the outreach and the conversations. And I'm getting close, and I'm almost there. So
what do you think is the reason people are so derisive about life coaching? Because we see it in media, it's like life coaching is kind of how they refer to it. And do you refer to yourself that way or not?
Nope, not at all. I do call myself a personal coach, but I do avoid the phrase life coach because of the negative connotation that comes with it. And most life coaches, I'm not saying all, most that I know work in what I call the squishy realm. And they're very lovey-dovey. This is pour from soul. I mean, don't get me wrong, not all. But most of those that aren't as squishy don't call themselves life coaches either. Success coaches, personal coach, whatever. I don't work in the squishy. Don't get me wrong. There's moments where I do because of emotions get certain levels, but I am a tell you how it is, in your face, no holds bar type of coach. I mean, I'm the type of guy where if you start making excuses, I will tell you, stop fucking saying that. Stop saying that. No, use this instead. I will literally stop you in your tracks.
And do you feel that approach is more appealing to men in general?
Surprisingly enough, I actually have more women clients that are open to that. Men tend to have a higher level of arrogance about them and pride where they don't like to hear shit like that. Whereas women tend to be a little more open to giving it straight. And it's weird that way.
I think that there's this thing fundamentally where women are really interested in doing the work. And it takes a man a bit more to get to a place of, oh, I really do want to change my life. Like you said, there's that element of arrogance.
Right.
It seems to be a very masculine quality.
Right. Which is funny because everyone talks about how you're supposed to have your target audience or your target market. Well, it's funny. I tried to do that. And then it was supposed to be men between 35 and 55. And I ended up with mostly women. So I'm like, yeah, I'll throw the target market out the window and just work with whoever I can help.
Got it. And what is it that you do for women that's so powerful?
It's the same thing. I do the same thing for everybody. I help identify where they're at and where they want to be and help them fill in the gaps in between to get there. And that can be different for everybody. Like there's a woman I'm working with right now who has a relationship issue. She's got a guy she's been in love with for 5 years. Sounds like he's not in love with her back. And we're working through those situations. So where she wants to be is in a stable relationship with somebody who's going to share life with her. And what we're working towards now is finding out that that's probably not the person she's currently with. And so, and there's another guy I'm working with right now who he's an entrepreneur and he wants to boost his business. Well, a lot of it is just about him not getting out of his comfort zone and not having that mental toughness. And so one of the things I do with most of the clients that have that issue is I have what I call Schmaltzy tasks. And it's literally tasks of my own design. Some I borrowed, and I give credit where credit is due, but most are my own design, and they're literally designed to get people out of their comfort zone and unrelated to what they're actually trying to get to. So if they're trying to grow their business, it has nothing to do with their business, relationship, etc. Like for example, one of the ones I love to give is, let's say I'm talking to a male client and he has trouble getting out of overcoming some fears. So my task will be, okay, I want you next time you go into the grocery store or intentionally go to the grocery store over the next few days, walk up to 5 random people and say, I am Batman. Just because it sounds silly, it sounds stupid, but most people are so afraid of what others are going to think that they won't do it unless somebody is forcing their hand. And most of the people, and I ask for somebody, if I'm not sure if they're actually going to do it, if I'm not sure about their integrity yet, I will ask them to have somebody record them doing this. Maybe not all of them, but at least a couple times. And most people that actually do it come out like, man, after the first 3, it was great. And I'm just like, then I went nuts and I talked to 10 people. I'm like, right. Because the first one's always the hardest. Once you get over that and the reaction, you're like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Exactly. It's the same thing when you're trying to find a new sale or trying to find a new client, or you're trying to get a promotion at work, or you're trying to meet that woman or man of your dreams. it's your own fear that's keeping you from an outcome that's probably not as bad as you think.
Got it. So what's your opinion about lazy boy furniture?
Honestly, I don't really have an opinion because I've never had one. So I can't say yes or no. I like the name. I've always liked the name, but I've never had a lazy boy couch, chair, or anything. So I can't speak to that myself.
So you eschew the lazy boy reality?
Yes, I do.
So would you advocate for any client that what they need is a nice recliner?
Yes, absolutely. I have a nice recliner. That's what I use.
Okay, well, that's what I mean by lazy boy. That's kind of a generic term. So
yeah. Well, lazy boy is
tell us why you own a recliner.
Well, so that is my spot. That is my morning routine spot, is that recliner. So, I'm doing my meditation, I don't have it kicked out, but when I'm doing my reading, like my morning routine is wake up, speak my declarations to myself, then the bathroom and everything, and then and then I meditate for 10 to 30 minutes, and then I read for 25 minutes. And then I move on to some exercise and some other tasks and journaling, things like that. But that chair, when I'm doing my meditation and my reading, is the spot. That's it. And when I'm meditating, I'll be sitting up straight because I've got some breathing exercises I do. But when I'm reading, I'm kicked back and I've got that book up and I'm going through it. And that's morning and evening reading if I decide to do both. And of course, like I said, we still stream some movies from time to time, so that's my spot.
Got it. And I love that you brought up breath work and meditation, right?
Yeah.
And journaling. It's such a powerful tool that people underutilize.
Yep.
And getting after out of your comfort zone does not mean that you have to become a jarhead, commitment freak, right? It's just this idea of crossing the threshold once in a while, right? No offense to jarheads. So my question is, what's your question, Greg? That's my question.
I'm wondering because that was a cheat.
Yeah, it was. It's like, I don't really have a question. Greg, go ahead.
No, I think he's being polite and giving me some space here.
No, that was an honest fuck up.
Oh, really? Nice transparency, Mark.
See, I know how to get out of the comfort zone.
Right.
Well, I'm wondering if routine is creating a comfort zone. Routine, in my experience, has an element of creating walls and boundaries. And when one lets go of routine, it gets scary.
Agreed. 100% agree. And so I change mine up frequently. Once every 3 months. Now, when I say frequently, once every quarter, every 3 months. Now, I may still keep the same elements, but I will intentionally rearrange them. So I'm like, my body's used to, first meditating, then reading, then exercising. Whereas now I'm exercising first, then meditating. It's like, whoa, what happened here?
And you do have an experience of like, I'm not comfortable.
Absolutely. Like one of the other Schmaltz tasks, this is actually the first one that I give every single person, regardless of whether I think they need that or not, is about breaking that routine and about getting out of that comfort zone. And that is to brush your teeth with your opposite hand. It sounds hard. It sounds simple, but it's really harder than you think. It's super uncomfortable, and it teaches your mind to do the things that are harder.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good, simple task to start flipping the switch. Mm-hmm. So have you experiences where within your own psyche, you start hitting places that are really dark and uncomfortable?
I haven't in a while, but I'll give you an example. So we moved down here to Palm Harbor, Florida about a year ago. Prior to that, when we were back in Panama City, Florida, back then, I tried to put on a large motivational speaker event, like 1,200 people. I spent, won't even talk about dollar amount, but lots and lots of money on venue. I had deposits down on speakers. I paid speakers. I had deposits with them. I had deposits with all kinds of things, and it didn't come off. And so all of those were non-refundable deposits, and some of them in the 50% range of some substantial figures. And so when that didn't come off, I had virtually no clients because I had stopped looking for clients because I was working on this. We had spent pretty much everything we had in savings. We ended up selling our house to cover the expenses we hadn't covered and then moving down here. And so during that time, after that didn't come off, that was some of the darkest times I'd had in years. And I was like, I had serious imposter syndrome. Why couldn't I do this? Other people have done this. Why? What's wrong with me? Why? Just questioning everything. And I broke my morning routine. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing the things that really helped me stay energized and positive until one of my friends, Kellen Flukiger, who I actually worked with for a while afterwards, he pulled the same kind of stunt that I do with people. And he's like, stop fucking doing that. Stop thinking that way. He literally just said, like, over a Zoom call, he's like, stop it right now. He's like, get back to your morning creation, get back to your morning routine, get back to this. Stop thinking that way. This is not Tony Schmaltz. This is not Schmaltzy. This is not the guy I know. Get that guy back here. And he's basically yelling at me over the call. And this is another coach, personal coach. And I was like, holy shit. And this is a guy I have a lot of respect for. I'm like, whew. And I stopped and I said, Kellen, you're right. And that's when I flipped the switch back. That was an immediate wake up call for me. And I was able to flip the switch back pretty quickly. And like 3 months later, I pulled off a virtual summit instead of a live and in-person summit, which kind of brought my confidence level back. I had big names. I had Steve Chandler. I had Kameen Samuel. I had Tom Sigler. I had all kinds of people, and just like boost that confidence again.
Nice. And how was
these people are having conversations
with your wife during this period? Your relationship with your wife, how did that go during this dark night of the soul?
She was more supportive than ever. She did not skip a beat, which is weird because I can't say weird. It's typically historically, it's been the opposite. It's been me staying positive all the time and her hitting that dark spot and me having to encourage her. But in this particular case, she was the strength. She was the backbone. She was the one that never stopped encouraging. And, even if I'm away from the house, like even today when I was down the road, she sent me a text. She's like, I love you and I appreciate everything you're doing for us. And I'm like, even just that, getting that every once in a while is like, brings you up, fills your cup up, or if not, overflows your cup.
Awesome.
So I'd love to ask you about this idea of waking up, right? Mm-hmm. There's this implication in that with a process that we're calling waking up, we are then able to access the fullest potential of who we are as human beings, which means our economic life, our personal fulfillment, our fitness, all of those things. What are we waking up from?
Well, the very first chapter in my book is titled Forget the Programming, because for years, our entire lives, and I'll tell you another little story after, our entire lives, we've been told how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to learn, how we're supposed to work, what we're supposed to do, who we're supposed to be. From the time we're super young, our parents, almost the first words out of their mouths are no, you can't do that. Don't touch that. That's bad for you. We get that embedded into our minds. And by age 7, most people by age 7 have developed their personality. And then by age 14, you've developed your habits that you're going to carry on into adulthood. And so it's crazy because all of that is being taught to us. And it's not until we learn to recognize that's it that we start to become who we really want to be. And a lot of times, most people in general, even at those younger ages, know in here that they're not being who they want to be, but they're so afraid of what their parents are going to think, their teachers are going to think, their pastors are going to think, their friends' parents, their bosses, whoever is going to think, that they don't let that person out. And so when I say forget the programming, I'm like, stop worrying about all these things that you were taught if that's not how you want to live your life. Now, I'm not saying, when I say don't care about what other people, I'm not saying go out and be an asshole or anything, but, it's just,
You're not advocating people become serial killers. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. If that's what you want, probably need some more mental health than I can provide, but but that's really it. So almost the first whole part 1 of my book is all about that. It's about getting rid of the victim card. It's about stopping the negative influence. It's about who you spend your time with. It's about the things you funnel into your brain versus what you are currently funneling into your brain. It's I have another chapter that says throw your laptop and your cell phone off the tallest building. And I'm not saying literally do that. I even say that in the first line. I'm like, no, I'm not telling you to actually do that. I can't live without them either. But I said, but I'm ultimately getting at spend less time. So many people live their lives.
We're waking up.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're waking up from the influence of our conditioning and the context of our media exposure. And we're waking up to who we are at a core level, the gift of our individual natures that the world is yearning for.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
We're yearning for, not necessarily the world. The world can benefit from it, but what we're yearning for.
How do you do that without playing the victim card? Because it seems like an easy mindset to fall into, like, oh, media and my parents and my school did this to me. And
well, the first thing I help people understand is that everyone has a choice. You have a choice whether you're going to play that card or not. You have a choice. Like I had a conversation with somebody today, a friend of mine, who was talking about how her sister and brother-in-law and son are going to come down and visit from up north and down here to Florida. And originally they were going to get an Airbnb, and then they said now their son's not coming, so now we have to stay with you. And yeah. she's like, so I'm stuck with them staying with me. I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, well, no, I didn't have a choice. I said, yes, you do have a choice. I said, you did not have to let them stay with you. You could still say you need to get that Airbnb. Well, I can't say no to family. Yes, you can. I said, you don't want to, but you can. That is still your choice. Well, it's really not. And we went back and forth. And I said, okay, well, first of all, this person's not very coachable. I was trying to make a point. It wasn't going over very well, but it is ultimately for everybody. We have that choice. Doesn't matter if it's family, friends, bosses, you have that choice. Mm-hmm. And so that's the same thing. You have the choice whether to play the victim card or not. And I like to use the example for personal responsibility. And it's funny because I first heard this example in a Jim Rohn speech, and then I later experienced the exact same example in real life. I'll just use my example. So a friend of mine is telling me one day, he's like, he got rear-ended. And he's like showing me the damage on his car. And he's like, hey, it's okay because, the officer showed up. Everyone agreed it's not my fault. It's not my response. I said, no, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And he looked at me funny. He's like, what do you mean? And I said, it is your responsibility. The state may not think it's your fault, but I think it is. It is your responsibility. He says, what do you mean? He's like, no. I'm getting this. I know you're getting paid for it, of course. I said, you chose to leave your house at that time. You chose to go that particular way to work. You chose to stop at that light. You chose XYZ PDQ. Those choices, and each one of those choices stacked up to leave you right there at that stoplight at that time to get rear-ended. Had you left your house 60 seconds later, you might have been behind that person. All of those choices we have in our lives lead to who we are today. So we need to accept who that is, make the decision to, like you said, throw that victim card out the window. No, I'm not going to worry about this is what somebody else said or somebody else did. I can control what I do and what I think and what I say.
All right. When Mark asked the question about wake up, what are we waking up from? And you said that your answer was connected to a personal story.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is just super recent, like last week. So my mom is very much not open to new thinking. She is very much the way she was when she was raised. She's 80 years old. It's not. So I sent her a copy of my book. She didn't read it right away, but then she started reading. And my mom is on the West Coast, and so she forgets about the 3-hour time difference. And so I'll get text messages from her like after I'm already in bed. I think it was Tuesday. I woke up to a text message that says, "You weren't programmed growing up." And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, clearly she's reading the book. And she obviously missed the part where I said, I'm not blaming any of these people. Everyone did the best they could with the thinking they had. And I was like, how do I respond to that? So that was the story. It was just like, all right, well, she didn't get out of the chapter what I was hoping people would get out of it. Although others have complimented me. My mom was just like tunnel vision on what I was saying about the programming from the parents and the teachers and the coaches and everything. And just like that one liner, you weren't programmed growing up. I was like,
right. So it's very interesting to me. Like we still logically up in our minds, the three of us, I think, are on the same plane with responsibility and our lives.
Right.
And I've heard 2 instances where there's this element of you, the personality Tony, interacting with another personality, and it's a water and oil experience.
Yeah, it is.
What do we do with that energy to stay positive and upbeat?
Well, stop wasting your time on people like that. Period.
Are you going to say that to your mom? Hey, mom, I'm not going to waste my time with you anymore.
She knows. Her and I have had that conversation, not to that like level of brutality, but it's like, mom, I mean, this is why you and I have a hard time having conversations. You know, I want to talk this way, you want to talk this way, and we don't have to meet in the middle. Now, if we're talking about something family related, cool, we can 100% get along and have a great conversation. Soon as we start talking about something that I'm doing in my world, it's the conversation ends pretty quickly. But again, I've had that conversation with her. I've had that conversation specifically to that effect that, hey, if we're going to talk, we need to talk about these types of things. Otherwise, we're going to get in conflict and I won't have that. That's not that you can count on me not having conflict with you and we'll end the conversation. And so there's another chapter in my book where I talk about stop being a lit match and letting somebody throw gasoline on you. That's the title of the book. And it's just that. It's letting yourself be around those negative people and then getting caught up in it. You know, you have, again, back to choices. You have the choice how much time you spend with those folks. And that includes family. Now, most people like that are negative like that, if I have a choice, which I always have a choice, I will just cut off. I'll be like, sorry, I'm not going to spend time with you anymore. Now, family, that's a little different. You're kind of in some ways obligated. However, I don't have to spend as much time talking to them. There's holidays, there's times I'm still going to stay in touch, but I'm going to limit that to a lot less time because I know what kind of things are going to try to funnel into my ear.
Have you found it possible to communicate love and be in a loving relationship with like your wife's family and your mom, who it sounds like predominantly are in a negative mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to still hold ground and share love with these individuals?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's how I lead. That's how we lead. We lead with love. Another example outside of family, though, was back to this guy, Kellen, when him and I were working together. I have learned patience for almost everything in my life. Compassion, love, patience for almost everything in my life, minus 2 things. One of them is other drivers in traffic. So I was having a conversation about that with this guy, Kellen, and he said, all right, next time you're on the road and you know you're going to be in traffic, he's like, I want you to pretend you are funneling love through you from divine, God, universe into that person that's frustrating you. I'm like, all right, Kellen, all right, I will try this. And so the next morning, because this was an evening conversation, the next morning I go to leave the house and I turn onto this road and almost immediately I'm like, wait. I'm like, I was literally I'm sure people were laughing at me because I was literally doing the action. I was like I was pouring it out of me and it's funny, once I actually was conscious about it and intentional about it, I actually had a really pleasant drive. I wasn't worried about how fast I got there. I wasn't worried about, oh, you cut me off. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm not going to flip you the bird or anything. I'm going to keep on going. And so that was, so we always try to lead with love, always. And it's not always possible. Of course, we're human beings. We live on planet Earth, welcome to planet Earth. However, when you intend on leading that way and are conscious about it, it makes it that much easier to be happy and that much easier to help other people be happy.
How important is your meditation practice to being able to do this process you're discussing?
Oh, let's just say I can definitely feel the difference if there's a day I'm not able to meditate. I can feel the difference in my attitude if I have not meditated that morning, and I go out and then I have to find other methods, whether it's just a simple get off into a corner and do some breathing or something. I usually have to find some sort of way to center myself. I call it my morning creation time because I'm creating who Tony needs to be for that day. And if I don't get all of that creation time, Tony hasn't created himself.
So that's part of our brain, right? We need repetitive conditioning in both the positive way or we get it in the negative way, right? And so we have to maintain that re-inputting of the positive information, the conditioning of ourselves, the discipline
Yes.
of love, right?
Yes.
So what do you want for Christmas?
My 2 front teeth.
No. What I want for Christmas is out of the realm of likelihood, but not completely. It's a stretch goal. Is a new boat.
All right. Say more about the boat.
Okay. So
You're manifesting it in this moment.
I am. And that's actually in my vision binder. It's a 42 foot Scout center console boat, fishing boat with four 350 horsepower Yamaha motors in the back, outboard motors. It's got a cuddy cabin down below with a bathroom, so that when I have my wife and my daughters on there, they don't have to try to pee over the side. And then, we did that on my last boat. It wasn't pretty. And then I've got all the fishing gear set up. I've got top of the line electronics for the fishing. It's actually got an actual enclosed cabin because here in Florida, I'm not sure if you're aware, it gets pretty damn hot and humid. So it's got sliding doors so that you can actually enclose the cabin and stay air conditioned. And then it's got a huge fishing deck where you can catch almost anything you want. And it's got a range where I could literally go 300 to 400 miles offshore.
So you're on the east coast of our nation?
I am on the Gulf side of Florida. So we're on the Gulf of Mexico.
So this boat, is that considered deep sea fishing out in the Gulf?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got to go quite a ways out. It's not like being on the West Coast. You know, growing up in Washington State, I fished for salmon and halibut and lingcod, and you can go,
40 miles.
Yeah, well, you don't even have to. I mean, you can go. What I was going to get at is if you're on the Pacific Ocean or you're on Puget Sound, you can go 200 yards out into the water and you're in 200 feet of water.
Right.
Here, you have to go 20 miles offshore to get into 200 feet of water. You sit in the 30 to 60 foot range for 12 miles. Wow. It's crazy. It's something like I never experienced before until I moved down here. I'm like, how far offshore? I'm looking at the fish finder on my buddy's boat before I had my own down there. He's like, I'm looking at like 65 feet. I'm like, how far out are we? He's like 12 miles. I'm like, we're only at 65 feet of water. What the heck is this? When I'm used to fishing.
Switch back to this thing you called the vision binder. And
yeah.
What's the relationship between crafting a vision, internally holding on to a vision, and the creation of the miracles in your life?
Good question. So a lot of people have a vision board, and I'm not knocking vision boards, although I do a vision binder because it's more close and personal. Like a vision board, somebody has it on their wall and you might look at it, you might not. With the vision binder, I've actually printed and laminated each one of these pictures of the things that I want. And some of that's dollar amounts in the bank account. Some of that's the relationship with my family. Some of that is those material things like the boat, the house, things like that. And then at the top of that, it actually says, I will have X, or I have, like, it's already happened. Like, I have this house by this date and this time. And so that's what I do before my meditation every morning. Is I will literally flip through that. And I won't spend a ton of time because I'll usually pick one of those visions to work on that morning because my meditation is also my visualization. And so I will pick one of those things and that'll be what I practice that morning. Although I do review the whole thing every day.
And so what do you think, it's obvious we've talked about the discipline of reprogramming and deprogramming the negative. What is it about this aspect of our consciousness that is the reason these things come in? And it's not just enough to sit in the recliner, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. It's how it has to start with you. It has to start with number one. And what I mean by that is I do believe in the law of attraction. And so what we speak into our world, how we act into our world, how we think into our world is what we're going to attract into our world. And so if we're speaking negative talk or we're thinking negative thoughts or we're acting in negative ways, we're going to attract more negativity into our world. And so there's many of times with some of those folks I've even mentioned earlier that when I practice speaking positively, even when they're being negatively, they tend to migrate that direction because they have to. Everything out of my mouth is coming positive, even though they're bashing or negative speaking. If I continue to stay with my glasses full and serve from the overflow of my cup, then they're going to have to pick up that overflow at some point. And so what you speak into your world and you really act into your world is really what you're going to attract into your world. So I really believe that it's still about the inside out. And when you work on that, and so it's usually one of the first things that I work with when somebody's talking about where they want to be. I'm like, cool. Well, how do you speak to people? How do you speak to yourself? How do you speak to, if you can't look yourself in the mirror and say, I love everything about you, cool. Let's start there and figure out what those things are that you don't love about yourself.
You guys up for a left turn?
Yeah. What was that, Greg?
Are you guys up for a left turn?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm always up for a left turn.
So you have 2 daughters?
I have 3 girls and a boy, and our son is the only biological. The rest are stepkids.
Oh, all right. So how are you an advocate for your 3 daughters? And generally speaking, we live in a patriarchal society. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the men in power emulate relationship the way our former President Trump does. Mm. So what are you doing for your 3 daughters that they can be empowered individuals in their life? Mm.
Well, I guess honestly, all 3 of them were raised more in a tomboy fashion. They all grew up fishing with me, camping with me, or us. I mean, camping with us, fishing with us, fixing cars with me, building stuff. I mean, they were raised, even though they're very feminine today, they have that masculine side that they've learned growing up in the household with us. And so they know that they can accomplish just about anything. Now that's varied of the 3 girls. Our oldest, Stephanie, she is definitely more on the stronger-willed side than say the other 2 girls. Stephanie she's for lack of a better, she's married with 2 kids, so we have 2 grandkids, and she's definitely the quote unquote man of the house. She is a stay-at-home mom, but she is the decision maker, the one that really makes things happen. And she knows that. She understands that is the world, and that's who she needs to be. Tiffany is in such a wonderful partnership. Her now fiance, Gino, her and Gino are so aligned. There is none of that. They're very equal in their communications and what they do, that whether that's just the way he is or the way we helped raise her, that is just, it's amazing to see that. Melinda, on the other hand, is very much on the submissive side, and in a relationship that we're not hugely fond of. Fortunately, I know she doesn't listen to my shows, so I don't have any risk of her hearing this, but, and she is, so the 2 older girls are actually my nieces, our nieces. We took them in when they were 9 and 10 and raised them as our own because their parents were not fit to be parents. And so they're still our girls. We call them our girls, our daughters, they call us their parents. However, they were 9 and 10 when we took them in. So those are our nieces. But Melinda is my legitimate stepdaughter. She was 4 years old when her mom and I got together. So I'm dad to her. Her real dad passed away when she was like a year old. So she doesn't remember him. However, her dad's side of the family has always been she's half Chinese, half Cambodian. The Chinese side of the family is very aggressive. And when I say negative, they like talk down to her and have for her whole life. Even no matter how much we get in the way, in the middle, there's always the times where she's with them and not with us. And they were calling, they're the type of people that call you stupid, you're an idiot, you're doing this wrong, that kind of thing, the thing that's really bashing to your mindset. And because of a lot of that, and well, my belief is because of a lot of that, now she is very submissive today. And so her current boyfriend that she's been with for a couple of years is very much that way. And it's painful for us to watch. However, anytime we try to have the discussion, it ends up pushing her away. So we're kind of like trickle it in as much as we can without pushing her away, and hope that someday she kind of snaps out of that.
It occurs to me there's a friend of Mark and mine that is a hardcore alcoholic and is pretty much bedridden these days. Mm. And now and then I would say to him, something so that bringing up his alcoholism, and it's a choice. Like, is this still what you want to choose in your life?
Right.
And I imagine that you and your wife with Melinda, it's a similar thing where now and then you just bring up, is this the choice you want to continue making in your life?
That's very well put. And actually, we have presented it almost exactly like that. Is this really what you want? You know, these are the things you've told us before his name's Van. Before Van, these are the things you've told us you really wanted. Are those still on the table, or have things changed, or what do you really want? And just kind of get her thinking that way. It's interesting because they're coming down. They still live in Panama City, but they're coming down here, which is about a 5.5 hour drive next weekend for the 4th of July weekend. And I'm somewhat anxious about it.
But here, coming back to what you and Mark were talking about earlier, you could start visualizing and calling in a miracle.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and without context of what that would be, other than it will be healing for all involved.
So 100%. In fact, the fact that I'm speaking negatively about it right now is out of character for me, because I do actually visualize his visit down here going well, him and I having good conversation. The only thing I don't like, and I will continue to probably hang on to that little piece of negativity, is my office here is also our spare room. So I'm going to have to give up my office for a few days. But outside of that, I do visualize our conversations, our interactions going well and going the way I would hope they would go.
So to push a little bit, since we're talking about letting go of comfort and our mindset, could you completely letting go of your office space and wholeheartedly gifting it to Van and Melinda be a seed of the miracle that could take place this 4th of July weekend?
Possibly. The exception to that, where I see it still being kind of a hang up, is that they don't plan on being here the whole time. They plan on doing their own thing. And so that I'm trying to focus on the trying to visualize the positive. Or when I'm sitting like at a fold out plastic table out there and they're gone, and knowing that my office is right there with a air mattress and a bunch of luggage, it's going to be a lot of time going to my happy place.
Well, but that's kind of like what a perfect opportunity for a real life element for someone you care deeply about, mm-hmm. whose life is very intertwined with yours.
Yeah.
And kind of like your friend saying, hey, when you go out into traffic tomorrow, see if you can, and it transformed your trip.
Yeah.
You know, hanging out at the card table in the hallway and just being as happy as you can be. Like, this is the best. This is the best.
Yeah.
Nothing better than this.
Oh, now you're sounding like my wife. At least as far as this situation goes, anyway. So you make great points, and you're right. And remember what I said earlier. There's two things in my life that I haven't been able to find patience for. One was driving. The other was this. So it is, and again, as we've talked about multiple times, I still have that choice. Yeah. I still have that choice. I can choose whether to think those negative thoughts. I can choose to let it bother me, or I can choose to, as you put it, let it be the best weekend it has ever been. And still working on that choice.
That I find amazing as of being human, that intellectually we know what's right, and still as human beings, we're like, I'm not fucking ready for this.
I know. Oh boy.
Oh, talk about a comfort zone, right? Getting outside a comfort zone.
Oh yeah. No, I'm gonna actually. You're calling me out on the carpet. Nobody usually does, so I'm gonna have to.
No, we're calling you into a new possibility for yourself.
Absolutely.
There's no carpet. There's no nose to be rubbed on there. We're calling you into a new possibility.
Have you read the subtitle to my book?
Not yet.
Break down the walls, keeping you from the possibilities.
Well, there you go. There you go. See?
I'm like, oh, yeah, you are definitely, yep.
Yeah, and may I ask, is she an adult? Is she 18?
She's just turned 25.
Got it. So your youngest, the one we're talking about who's submissive, is 25.
Yes, correct.
So she's responsible for this.
Yes, 100%.
And you're not.
That's very well put. Very well put. Very well put. Yeah.
So you're invited to completely let go. And this brings me back to another thing. And this is a little controversial because we very much as a culture in the modern era, the 21st century, devoted a definition to the word patriarchy that's derisive. Mm-hmm. And part of the meaning of it that gets eclipsed is the part that is the caretaker, the protector, the paternal instinct, which provides a safety net, right?
Right.
And so the idea that we've got to counteract the dominant, oppressive, personally negating and undermining aspects of patriarchal overstep. Mm-hmm. There's still a thing where there's an energy of patriarchal love, of protection, of provision, of creating a safe space, right? And so in this relationship that where your daughter's chosen the place of submissive role for herself to live with the powerful protection and provision of the leadership of her boyfriend represents this really nuanced spot in this conversation. And I'm not clear that there aren't toxic elements to his behavior. I don't have insight to that or not. But my hope is that this is functional and that they both are taking responsibility for their own participation in this in a way that ultimately leads to a beneficial outcome, a mutually holistic and healthy outcome. And that's my take on this. There's another question Greg and I typically ask at the end of the show, but what do you think about spirituality? I said, what do you want for Christmas? Which is sort of a funny way to get into your boat story. But I'm wondering what you think is part of how spirituality shifts people's way of being, because miracle itself has an origin in a kind of spiritual idea, right? So in your coaching work and in your life philosophy and the way you operate, without necessarily connecting to the denomination or the particular practice, what is the role of spirituality in your work and in your life?
So we don't get involved in religion. Even though I was born and raised Catholic and my wife was born and raised Buddhist. We both agree there is some sort of higher power, call it divine, God, universe, something. We do believe that is there. And we do funnel through that, entity, whatever you want to call it. And so we do use that in the spiritual sense as far as, back to the miracles. Think about some of the miracles that happen within us and outside that are unexplainable. Think about like when you cut your finger. Do you sit here and think, heal finger? No, it does. All the cells work together the way they're supposed to. Power of the subconscious mind, call it divine, universe, whatever. So we do use that higher power in with our meditations, with our thoughts, with our being, and we we understand that is there. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, I want to dig a little deeper.
Please.
The recognition of a higher power, and the way you've described it is the intersection between Buddhism and Christianity without a myopic or dogmatic approach to either. Mm-hmm. And so there's something there that doesn't need to be named, but it's a felt sense. It's you connect to it viscerally somehow, and you believe in it. So you create it through your beliefs, right? Correct. And so how does that idea play a role in the way you coach? Do you coach with people from a spiritual angle? Do you how do you allow this into your life and your business?
I see what you're saying. So yes, and that depends on the individual, of course, because some people, I do work with a lot of people that are religious in religious nature. And so a lot of times where I will talk meditation, I'll have them talk prayers and work with prayers because that's what they believe. So when I'm meditating, I'm meditating to a higher power, to the universe. I'm using my visualizations, where somebody who is a denominational will want to do prayers, and I'll guide them through that piece in the same sense of what I'm doing, just more related to what they believe in. And as far as spirituality, I do help. I've never had anybody not accept this, but so I do try to help people, guide people through. How am I trying to say this? Through that sense of feeling there's a higher power, there's a being. And, I do believe in enlightenment, and I do believe that, I do believe Jesus existed. I do believe some of these other, and do I believe necessarily he was the Son of God? Maybe, maybe not. However, I do believe he was an enlightened individual. And I do believe that about other figures in history that were just enlightened individuals, because they believed so much powerfully in the universe, in what they were being, that they were able to expand their existence within their minds, within their bodies. And that's really how we work on it ourselves. And if people are open to it, I do work in that into the coaching. Regardless, I do work it in at least to the sense of understanding where some of these miracles come from, that these miracles are not human controlled, are not our control. They are things that are miracles that are happening because of this other consciousness, this universe, this higher being, whatever that is, whatever you believe in. So I do help people understand that level of spirituality.
Got it.
Yeah, my understanding of Jesus is he wasn't saying, I'm the Son of God and you're not. Mm-hmm. He was saying, we're the Son of God.
Correct. And so the other shirt I actually had on today, this morning, actually just says, I am across it. Now, when I say I am,
croissant?
What's that?
You are a croissant?
Yeah, I could be whatever I want to be.
what is it? I am a what?
It just says I am. Period. Oh, okay. It just says I am, because that's how I start my declarations every day. I am powerful. I am this, whatever that statement is. And what's funny is I had a very religious person come up to me and say, oh, did you get that out of the Bible? And they were quoting the scripture that God says I am. And I'm like, no, like, I understand what you're saying. And if you actually read into the Bible, he is saying that we are, like you said, we are, even though he says that I am, he's not saying that he eventually talks about how we are, or they talks about how God is referring to everybody as built in his image to be like him. And so a lot of people take things out of context, which is another reason why we don't believe in organized religion per se, because it's all funneled into the way back to that programming.
I love water as a spiritual element to give me consciousness of what it is I'm attempting to understand with eternal and divine. And when you were just speaking with the I am in the Bible, I could see us looking at the ocean and at a waterfall and not realizing they're one and the same. How would you it's water. Water just says I'm water. Mm-hmm. But we could say, well, that's different than that.
Yeah, well, we could do a whole other show on the difference in perceptions too.
Right.
We don't know. Go ahead.
I want to bring you into a new interpretation of that T-shirt.
Okay, please.
I am, which means I get up and the first thing I do is I run my manifestation visions and I do my meditations so I am is another form of this T-shirt that you have, and I think it's cute to bring that up. So I'm bringing it up when these are my little tiny hands.
That everyone wakes up in the morning.
No. So that's what I do in the morning. In the morning, I say my I am statements every morning. And that's when I bought that shirt, when I actually had that shirt made. When I made that shirt, that was the intention behind it, was this is about me saying who I am, who I'm being.
And my point in I am is that as people, when we set the intention and the discipline of creating the way we operate from the morning we wake up, the moment we wake up, we're creating a resonant frequency for the day.
Yes.
And so I am is another form of this. And again, like I said before, it's me being cute.
Yeah. But I do like how you talk about creation, because I told you I call it my morning creation time, because I'm creating the way I'm going to be for that day.
Have you ever thought of coming back to Melinda, attempting to see Van through her eyes
I have attempted that. Back to what you were talking about earlier, Mark, about how you would hope it's very cohesive. It seems to be that way now. It wasn't, they're one of those relationships that started off rougher than it is today, basically. And, most people go through the honeymoon stages and then it starts to break apart. They were the opposite. They were like, holy shit, Batman, what the hell are you two doing together? And then they started to seem to smooth things out. And I have way improved on my interactions with him throughout the time that they've been together for that reason, because I have seen that growth. I have seen that growth in him and in the relationships. I've had to let go of some instances I've seen that were not so pleasant, and including how he's spoken to her and spoken down to her, which I almost threw him out of the car while we were driving at one point. So now it seems to be, now he's got a better job. He's been promoted to a supervisor. I mean, he's showing more ambition than he's ever showed before. They seem to be, they've got their own place. They just moved into a house from their apartment. So they seem to be working together a lot better. And so to the earlier conversation, it is a heck of a lot easier for me today to be able to make it a better weekend than it would have been, say, 2 years ago when I was witnessing this constant barrage of him talking down to her. I don't see that nearly as much anymore. So it's a lot easier for me to be able to handle that relationship.
So in the sense that the more you make room for the possibility of them being healthy, the more you become part of the miracle.
Right. You're right.
Well, this is go ahead.
Are we ready to wrap up? Is that where you're heading?
Yeah, I was about to ask the question.
All right, wait, before we ask that, since you're from Seattle, what's your relationship with coffee?
Well, let's put it this way. Melinda still works at Starbucks, even in Florida.
All right.
So I get free pounds of Starbucks from Melinda, and I am a coffee nut. In fact, it drives me bonkers when I watch people walking around with like a Dunkin' Donuts coffee around here. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, this is great. I'm like, it's basically gas station coffee. What are you doing?
Water, dirty water. I just finished the book by the CEO and founder of Starbucks called Onward. Did you happen to read that book?
I haven't, but I've heard good things about it.
It's great. And part of what I love about it, part of what I love about it is what the three of us are talking about, to see a human being grappling with international issues while attempting to hold a vision at a time where the entity was challenged, not by the economy falling out, by eternal mistakes that had built up over time.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful read.
That's good. I'm definitely going to get it. Now I've got I've got a long list of books that are on my wish list. So I'm one of those guys. As soon as somebody tells me a book, I put it right on my wish list. I used to just buy them, and then my wife would give me so much shit about having a stack of books that I wasn't reading yet because I was in the middle of. I'm like, but so and so recommended these, so I would. Until very recently, I used to have next to my bookshelf, I'd have a stack that was the unread books, and they would only go onto my shelf after I read them. And so now she's like, just keep them in your Amazon cart. Don't buy them until you're ready to read it. Like, okay.
And before we have
I too have the same problem.
Libraries, gentlemen, libraries. And are you both on Spotify?
Yep.
No, I'm not a Spotify person.
Okay. So there's audiobooks on Spotify. And like our library has audiobooks that are free, and libraries.
So everybody tells me that's what you're holding in your hand is exactly the problem with me going to the library. They would get a book back that is you could see from space because of all the highlights and all the stickies. I mean, it's pretty. So many people have told me the same thing about the library, and I'm not afraid of the library. I grew up with the library. I still have a library card. However, if it's a book that I am a highlight and sticky tab guy. I mean, one of my coaches a few years ago, when he came to my house and saw the sticky tabs I had in my book, he's like, "What, did you invest in 3M? Come on." he's like 3M stock just went up by all your purchases. I'm like, yeah. Yeah.
Have the culture of your part of your family, the Cambodian and Chinese culture, have you explored music in those realms at all?
I haven't had a choice. So if you, the Chinese, not so much. I have not spent much time with the Chinese side of the family, mostly just because of how negative they constantly are. And it's really hard to be around them. Even before I started shifting my mindset, it was that terrible. But on the Cambodian side, they are all karaoke singers. Like they all love their karaoke, and it's all Thai or Cambodian music. So I have the better part of 20 years of listening to that every time we were at one of their houses. Even if they weren't singing, they had it on the TV so that you all got to listen to it.
So is there a band?
What's your go-to tune, man? What's your go-to song when you have to do karaoke?
When I have to, that's there's so many, but I actually like to sing karaoke, but I usually have to pull out my phone and look through my playlist to find which one I'm going to do. But the go-to one that if I can't think of anything else, is always Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. I always got to go back to that. I mean, I got so many, but that is, if there nothing comes to mind, that's my default.
All right. Not a pirate turns 40. Wait, before we ask this final question, what would you recommend to explore in the Cambodian music genre, like a band or a personality where you're like, check this out? I
honestly couldn't tell you. Even though I hear the music all the time, I didn't pay that close of attention. I never really got into it per se. It's very, and well, maybe it's because they always had the decibels so loud that you couldn't talk to somebody next to you. But it's like, I was like, what? What? But I really got into it. I heard it all the time, but I wouldn't say there was anything that really caught my attention. You know, they're all even though the words may be different, the music itself is almost all the same.
There's a band out of LA. There's a band out of LA that, and it's something fever. What's the fever in the jungles of Cambodia? It's something, oh, shoot.
What
anyway,
12 things are the fever in the jungles of Cambodia? There's probably more than a few.
No, but this
probably a few.
Oh, I wish I could remember.
All right, without going down that road necessarily, if you want to get Tony's book, it's Wake the Bleep Up. And if you want to go and find out more about Tony's offerings, it's TonySchmaltz.com with a Z. And Tony, this is the big question. We've talked about it a couple times. We actually put a lot of stock in this, and it matters how you answer it. But of course, we want it from the heart, right? Don't try to give us the intellectual answer. Give us the honest answer.
The fact that he's laughing already.
Foo Fighters or Eminem?
Oh,
Foo Fighters or Eminem?
Foo Fighters. Come on. Is that even a question?
Say a little bit why. Say a little bit about why.
Well, even though Eminem has some good lyrics, I have never been into rap. And even though like earlier hip hop, when it was more hip hop, now it's more in the rap side. However, I have been a rock guy forever. I've got two older brothers, so I grew up with 80s hair bands. I mean, I grew up with 70s and 80s hair bands, and then moving on into the rock genre. And I'm from Seattle. Come on, I was growing up during the grunge scene and the Pearl Jam, Nirvana. I've been to Kurt Cobain's growing up house. I mean, it's like it's got to be the Foo Fighters.
Got it. Well, it's been really fun hanging out with you, and good luck with everything that you're up to, your family and your boat and all of those things. And we'd love to hear from you in the future if you write another book or if you just want to come and visit some more.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for spending the time with us.
Thanks for having us. It's been a great conversation. You guys are wonderful, and this has been so much fun.
Recording stopped.